Hello everyone, today I'm going to be taking a look at the Warcrow Adventures box from Corvus Belli and the Yaldabaoth Card Pack. Okay then, the big box for Warcrow Adventures from Corvus Belli is a 4-player dungeon crawl style game. On the back you can see miniatures, villains and heroes, board sections as you explore Hawthorn Point, a coastal town on the island of Asil. So you get the background for what's happening in Lindworm in this particular part of it. A cooperative dungeon crawler for up to 4 players, and in order to play Warcrow Adventures a supplementary app is required. Not optional, is required. You can download it from Steam, Apple and Google. So flipping it over and popping the box open, we see it's absolutely jam-packed, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Front and center we have a big poster / flyer for Warcrow, the wargame, with infinity on the reverse. Then we have our rulebook and cardboard sections, and then we have our trays. Now, interesting, no cover on this tray. Don't know if that's deliberate or not, because once you've punched out all those tokens and stuff, there won't be anything to hold these in. So we have base rings, small cards, character cards for heroes and villains. The first of our miniatures, dice and little marker cubes. And then the second tray, which is covered, has all the rest of our miniatures. Right. Let's be a bit more methodical about this. We'll unpack it and take a look in sections. Okay, kicking things off then, we have the rules. So it is a 40-page booklet. You get game summary, followed by a bit about the app, which is important. We'll come back to that in a moment. Your component list, basic information, how to start a campaign, playing a scenario, what's involved, completing it, types of cards, markers, enemies, various states, including wounded, tinge and the like, and then the Hawthorn Point phase, which is your campaign phase at the end, finished with a reference sheet. So, as you can see, it's somewhat packed with stuff, be it reference cards, wound tokens, state tokens, markers, energy, all sorts of things like that. How the dice work. Die in this game are color-coded, so they may be familiar to people who've played things like Aristea in the past. And essentially it goes from red, I want to say red through to black, but then this shows it in a different order, probably because you've got 2 slightly different types of dice there. So you can level up a dice or reduce a die in color value, and then depending on what they are, they'll have more crits or special activations or that sort of thing on them. So you roll a number of dice from your dice pool and then collate the correct amount of symbols, either successes, critical successes or triggers, and then each trigger, which are specials, will allow you to do multiple things multiple times, so you can potentially stack a few different things on there. Breakdown of the character sheet and how you play your campaign, a flow chart to show you how that works, and so on and so forth. So full color, well laid out, 40 odd pages, but it is just the mechanics of the game. All of the scenarios and the like are on that app. So because it's cooperative, it does mean the narrative story is kept secret from everyone, so you don't have to worry about accidentally reading on too far, or knowing that if you do a certain thing, it will have an impact on the next game or later on in the scenario. However, obviously, apps are not everybody's cup of tea, so depending on your point of view, you may or may not find that a deal breaker. The reference sheet is very simple. It's just this. Your game round laid out in phases, what happens, and then the states that can be left on a character for any length of time. Everything else is more or less controlled by your cards. So taking a look at the card stock itself then. This looks like it's 2mm cardstock. You can see here the initiative wheel, which is sort of a timer and a tracker all in one. The little widget goes in here, and then character counters and monsters go on here. As they activate, they move around. So something that has an initiative of 4 would get to activate on turn 4, turn 8. Something that has an initiative of 6 would just get to activate on turn 6. Also, anything in the scenario that would trigger at a certain time is also put on here. So it's like a clock checking down. Really nice artwork on them. Once you've activated, or if anything happens and you have to lose a turn, you would flip it over to the sepia tone side. Then we have some of these status tokens, whole sheet of those, all centrally punched as well, which is good. There's nothing worse than having a token that's off center when you actually get it off the punch board. After that, we have the wounds and stain or tinge tokens, so you can track those. And then our actual Hawthorn Point tiles. So you get a couple of rooms there with some locked doors. And then we have 4 additional sheets of tiles, which are double-sided. So you've got the wilderness on one side and the city or village on the other. And the tiles themselves are in a standard setup, so 3x5, 3x3, 2x5 and a 5x5. So being able to put together your village or outdoor location should be relatively painless. You're not having to hunt for specific strange sized tiles. And it should also hopefully fit on most tables to play without too many difficulties. Okay, so taking a look then at the smaller stuff. There are 2 mini decks of cards for people who want to sleeve all of their stuff. They are 62mm by 40 or 62 by 42 possibly. There's a mini deck of that size, but watch out, the USA also have a mini deck that's slightly bigger. Not sure why. I'll not go through all of those, but that is your equipment, along with tattoos and other upgrades and things like that. The die, as I've already mentioned, are color-coded and specifically set up sort of attack and defense. They are D8 rather than D6. Now, on to the fun stuff. Our characters. So each character has, apart from their starting equipment that you'll have to go in and find, one of these character sheets. I'll very briefly explain it with Derek here, the wildling. So we have initiative at the top, so how often they'll activate within a track. They have their movement, their defense, their magical resistance. Over here is energy. And then they also have their vitality, so how many hit points they have. Energy are used here, so he gains 3 energy in a turn, and then you allocate them into any of these bronzed sections. As they upgrade, they unlock some of these other ones, so during the campaign they'll be able to go further along this track. But you might want to go faster, so you would allocate some energy to initiative for a turn, or an additional move, or better shooting actions. Down here we have your standard sort of RPG stat line. So you've got strength, agility, wisdom, perception, charisma, and willpower, or sorry, int and willpower. And then an ability, so aim in this case. You may reroll 1 die from the attack with your bow. And then they also have an accompanying smaller card with a trait or special ability on it. Hunter's Mark. Your attack rolls against targets with the Hunter's Mark, you gain the switch 2 specials to add a success to your roll. Same enemy cannot have more than 1 Hunter's Mark. So fairly standard stuff. On the back you can see some of the upgrades that they get, what these energy actions actually mean. So there's one of those for each of the characters, along with the accompanying smaller card. And then we have the characters themselves. So we started with Dara, we as well continue with him. The models are 32, potentially 35 mil. Hard plastic board game pieces. Really nice level of detail on them there, as you can see from all the leaf work on the cloak. Obviously, being board game pieces, they are pre-assembled, so if you're going to be going in and painting these, you may need to get a bit creative with where the brush goes in to reach all those points, because some of these, obviously, if they were a standard miniature for a game, you would have them built in sections, or if there was anything overlapping, you'd keep it out of your way. Ormok, or Mook, the massive savage orc beater with that huge flail axe, because that's how you stop people blocking. Just have something that goes around corners. He is a majestic 40 mil tall. And then we have Naira, one of our casters, with that massive magical effect arcing off. I'm sure no problems will come in any way, shape or form with her in your party. Certainly not down the line. Ludwig, a clerical type, ready to batter people senseless. And the last is the dwarf in the party, so Zuka. I really like the look of this dwarf, the armor. It's very stylized. Lots of hard angles repeating all over the place. And that's a wicked looking, I don't even know if it's a warhammer, it's probably more like a maul / pick. But yeah, the heroes are absolutely gorgeous. Hard enough plastic, although because some of them are multi-part, you may find that the majority of the body is hard plastic, and then potentially some of the other parts are softer plastic to get them to come together. Pushing on to our villain types. We'll start off with some of the lower echelons. So we have a guard here with those massive antlers like a leshen, and a patchwork cloak, probably made from people's skin, May have to bend some of these with a bit of hot water. You can see here this is a softer plastic to the actual body. But overall, the design aesthetic is excellent, and the recreation of the art into miniature form works beautifully well. Here's one of the intact, with those wicked looking claws. So the villains of the piece are an unusual bunch, be it some sort of creeping monstrosity or animated flesh like the husks. So for most of these you will get multiple miniatures, 6 of the intact, 4 for the husks, 4 for the guards. Some of the bigger things you'll receive individuals. So for example, we have the progenitor sculptor here, who is a big fellow with, as you can see, 6 limbs. Really nice design on the cloak as well. He comes in at almost 50 mil tall, about 45 to eye level. So very long limbed with additional body parts. Flesh sculptors. We have a progenitor weaver. Again, unusual looking things. As you can see from their cards, they have a similar magical and standard defense and initiative track, but then the bottom of their card has their attack die and any special abilities or triggers on there. So it's a bit simpler when you're playing through. Adaru, which is just baffling. It's like somebody's trying to capture the moon in an oil slick. I do like how the grim, evil things that they are, they're a mix of body horror and magic. You know, physics has gone away as all of the drips of the stain and tinge sort of float up. It's a bizarre look that really is quite unique when you compare it to a lot of other fantasy. Generally, people would just be batting orcs all the time. In this case, the orcs have much to lose, as everybody else does. The anointed, big heavy hitters, with that massive looking staggered sword. I used the phrase quite wrongly, I think. It doesn't have a bladed edge. It does have a blade at the bottom. So he's absolutely adorable. Then after that, we have our puppeteer. So another one of the leader types. I imagine these will be an absolute dream for painters to get into. Be it either just a quick paint job for board gaming, or if you want to push them further and use them in the actual Warcrow Adventures, that's doable as well. In fact, we'll be taking a look at the cards for that very shortly. Little teeny tiny Feldhalu, which is a darling. And then we have our big ones. So the Darned, massive monster on a 55 mil base. This is the one that was delightfully called Lula, I believe, by Hoppo. 70 mil tall. I've no idea where the eyes are on that, so I'm not going to look for them. Really interesting pose. I do have a problem with it though. Obviously, when we got the chance to do the playthrough, it was a resin prototype, which is relatively light. This is a solid piece of plastic, and it's a little bit back heavy. Now, because it's being used in a board game, it's not a major issue. However, if you are planning on using this in Warcrow Adventures as a wargame piece where you will have scenery, hills, uneven surfaces, you're going to have to weight this base at the front, and possibly with something fairly substantial because of that. A minor nitpick, which will only really impact people who want to use them in the board game as well. Finally, Mornmab, another 55mm base, another brutal construct. Body horror everywhere as they sculpt it together. I don't believe my little stick will measure up, so in this case, back to the old ruler. He is approximately 72 to the top of his spinaties on the back, which open up to show a world of pain inside. And approximately 62mm to eye level. So, in which case my little stick would have measured. But there you go. But great set of miniatures for the game itself. Let's take a look at the Yaldabaoth Card Pack for Warcrow. Okay, so the Yaldabaoth Card Pack, you can get this separately, specifically for Warcrow. So if you fancy using the miniatures inside Warcrow Adventures as a force within the skirmish wargame, then you can pick this set of cards up. So it's supplemental. Obviously, when the actual miniatures are released for the wargame, their cards will be available with them, I presume. Whereas these are specifically to allow people who have the Warcrow Adventures to double dip with their force. The box contains all of the cards, which are in English and Spanish, and it also contains a exclusive progenitor sculptor. So take a look at him first. Unlike the board game, he is multi-part plastic. So as you can see, a spectacularly monstrous body come together, around about 60mm tall. These arms were separate, front leg was separate, mask, and then the front and back of the body was separate as well. So cloak went onto the body, front leg went on, mask and two arms. Bosh, you're done. Really nice level of detail with this. Plastic, little bit soft. So when you're cleaning up, use a sharp scalpel. I don't think you will get away with using a file. You'll probably get burrs on it. A couple of annoying sprue gates that I had to get round. I haven't done a full clean-up on it yet, but there was one right on the side of the mask rather than underneath, so I'm not sure how close to clip that without losing details. And then there was another that actually came out below this, so where that gap is between the knife and the cloak, that was completely solid, which I had to trim out to remove that piece. But otherwise, nice little bonus hero or champion, I suppose. Looking at the cards themselves, they are the standard that you would get from Warcrow. So you can see here they have their base setup. Heroes, for example, can either be run by themselves, in which case use the top profile, or if they are attached as officers to units, then you use the bottom profile as a upgrade. The box itself contains not just the Yaldabaoth, but also contains all of the red caps in there as well, which is another expansion for Warcrow Adventures. So if you pick up the expansion, or if you got the Kickstarter, then you could actually squeeze a force and a half out of this, depending on how you want to play them. But otherwise, it gives you all of the models that you get in the box, some of them in named versions and some of them as regular. So there are possibilities to change up your list building as well in here. But it's a nice little addition within the actual game itself for those who have picked up the board game to start to explore the tabletop skirmish game as well. So nice to have, and like I say, Spanish as well if you want to learn another language. And the addition of the limited or exclusive figure is a really nice touch, just to give you a bit more oomph to your Yaldabaoth. So there we go, the Warcrow Adventures starter set. A big box of fun, tons of miniatures in there that look absolutely fantastic. Really interesting board game with some cute mechanics for that sort of ticking clock, and for once a game that really shows off the speed of elves being much faster, more aggressive than mere mortals or even little stunty dwarf types. So you have this really intriguing aspect to Dungeon Crawler that just changes up how things play beyond the aesthetics, although obviously the aesthetics look fantastic. Likewise, the option of being able to pick up the card deck for the Yaldabaoth means that you have access to those models from the box set, along with that sculptor progenitor as a faction within Warcrow itself. So if you want to get these as an army onto the table for the first time, then this is a terrific way of doing it. So really you can double down on the fact that this is 2 games in 1 box. But let me know what you think below. Until next time, bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.